Welcome to Joyful Purpose, a podcast where we share faithful stories of purpose, joy, and resilience. I'm your host, Sheila Hora, and together we'll explore how faith shapes our lives, careers, and the challenges we navigate. Each episode, we sit down with incredible guests who are walking in faith, pursuing their calling, and making an impact. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Katie. After many years wondering what talents God granted her, Katie discovered it is and always has been centered around people. After graduating from the University of the Pacific with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration, with a concentration in marketing and minor in studio art, she found a career completely off her radar in human resources. She seemingly fell into this discipline by mistake when Google reached out about a recruiting job. But now she understands it was God guiding her to an immensely rewarding career serving people. From there, Katie entered the Silicon Valley's fast-paced startup world, where she has consistently supported the people behind the technology through building human-centric organizations, what she fondly calls as people success. Katie has earned several HR designations, including the SHRM, SCP, PHR, GPHR, and currently serves as a member of the executive team at Elementum. When not attending church functions, supporting her daughter's classical Christian school, or chasing her 3 children, she is often found at the barn, perfecting the art of keeping a horse between her and the ground. Katie and I met because our daughters go to the same school, and over time I've come to admire her fashionable, authentic, and ambitious spirit. Yet what stands out most is that everything she does is rooted in faith and God's purpose. She's a woman who pursues excellence, not just in her career, but in the way she serves people and lives out her calling. Welcome, Katie. How are you doing today?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm good.
Thank you for making this happen. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I want to jump into your faith journey. Faith is such a personal journey, and everyone's path to Christ is different. Can you share how you first came to faith?
Yeah, so I actually am lucky enough that I was born into a Christian family. So I don't have one of those conversion moments that's like, dramatic and exciting. I just have slowly always been discovering new ways that God has been important in my life. So I would say it's a number of different experiences, but I would say probably there's a couple that stand out to me as ways that God has touched my life. The first being when I was, I think in 5th grade, I must have been around 10 years old. You read the Bible and you hear in the Old Testament especially all the times that God speaks to his people. And it's like you can hear him. He's there, right? And I, for some reason, decided in my head, like, God needs to talk to me too. So I had in my mind, like I was praying every night. I'm like, God, I want you to talk to me. Like, I actually want to hear your voice. I want you to talk to me just the way you did to Moses and to all the Old Testament characters. And I remember, just waiting. I just knew he was going to talk to me. And I walked into the kitchen one day. My mom was making dinner and she would always have Christian radio on, and there'd be pastors talking or there'd be Christian music, whatever. And so I walked in and she was listening to a sermon, and the pastor was talking to his congregants and saying, I walked in just for this sentence. I'm not kidding you. He's like, and you think God's going to talk to you like out loud? Like, what are you thinking? Like, that's not how this works. And he explained how God talks to people through other people, through, things that happen and circumstances that do or do not work out. And I literally froze in my steps, and I get goosebumps thinking about it now. That was God answering my prayer and talking to me, but not in the childish kind of just the way that I had decided he should talk to me. So that's like one of those moments where God was so real to me growing up. And there's a variety of other ones. That's kind of a silly, kind of memorable, fond memory I have, but he's been with me through so many different things. With my dad's diagnosis of cancer, both my parents dying at an early age for myself, from, moving out from California to Colorado. There's just so many different ways that he's shown up in a very tangible way that I am thankful for. And so it just grows my faith every time.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing. what I heard was you being obedient and you seeking God through every experience you've had. The extraordinary moments that make up our faith journey, but it's amazing to hear this simplistic, ordinary steps that you took to seek God, which is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask if you had any challenges or suffering through your journey in faith.
Yeah, I think that's when I would talk about my dad being diagnosed with cancer. It was around the same time when I was 10. And he was given 5 years to live, which I did not know at the time. My mom was an incredible mom. Like, she just knew she wanted to care for children since she was a young girl. And so her career was teaching before she had her own children. And then she became a stay-at-home mom and really dedicated her lives to her family, which I think is such a noble pursuit. But so she kept a lot of the details away from us, obviously. When I was 10, my sisters were probably at the time around 7. So we were much too young to really understand the gravity of the situation. So this is more of me kind of looking back on the situation. But so he wasn't given long to live. My mom had 3 young children, and, you know, she did her best to shield us. But I remember as I was growing up, there was this kind of realization that things were not normal and dad was not okay. And so I remember like waking up in the middle of the night and hearing my mom crying in the bedroom, or like my dad's sick or something. You know, you just kind of put those little pieces together. You're like, oh, whatever this cancer thing is, that's a bad thing. This is not good. And I think with that as a backdrop, it made me grow up in a way, or maybe just to shortcut to maturity a little bit, which didn't affect my fondness for my childhood. It wasn't like I had this immense pressure. It was just, you kind of reorder your priorities as a result. And I think that that's why faith and God and those real truths became so apparent as being a non-negotiable, important part of my life from early on. And, you know, and then as I mentioned, God was so good to our family throughout all of these difficulties. Through all of this, I would say my parents' faith was strengthened. At the time, we were Catholic. I grew up Catholic. I'm half Italian, 2 Italian grandmothers. It was not a choice. That's just like, we all were Catholic, right? And I think as my mom started seeking God more, especially through a program called BSF, Bible Study Fellowship, they run Bible studies that are so incredibly well organized, very biblically sound. She learned so much about Jesus in that process of going to these BSF meetings, and then pulled my dad into going. And the two of them really realized, hey, you know, and this is not meant to be disparaging to any of your listeners who may be Catholic. I have so much respect for the Catholic faith and how they show up to protect unborn children and the godly definition of marriage and all these other things. So that's all as an aside. But in our lives, there was a richness of this relationship with Jesus that was not there, and that we found. And my parents realized, okay, we're going to have to go to a new church. We want to like make this more of a priority in our lives. And it really did change the trajectory for our whole family. And so something as devastating as cancer and something as difficult as, you know, a terminal illness, my dad even looked back on it and he was thankful for it. He's like, you know, cancer was an education and the tuition is very high, but it is something that I never would have wished upon myself, but I am so thankful that we went through this, because it did bring us into a closer relationship as a family with Jesus and understanding the importance of a relationship with him. So I guess one of the things I've learned growing up with that as a backdrop is that, you know, life is hard sometimes and we don't understand the big picture, but you can always trust in God having a plan, and that his plan is good and it's for your good. And so as much as you might be in the middle of it and not understand how this possibly could work out to be something favorable for you, that's where I've learned to grow this muscle of letting go. Because as much as I can worry about the details, when you're in the middle of it, you can't see what comes next around the corner. And that's what God does see. And he knows how to use any circumstances, even of a fallen world, to glorify him and to be good for his children. So Yeah, that's probably like the toughest thing that was a constant growing up. And I am happy to say my dad actually lived for 21 years, not 5 years. I had him throughout my young childhood, as I did have my mom as well. And so, God is
Praise
good. He
God.
provided for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Your story is so powerful. We all are good people innately, but the missing connection is us accepting Jesus as our Savior, right? And having that relationship with Jesus. Thank you for sharing that. Was there ever any doubt in your faith journey?
I am a very stubborn and loyal person to a fault. Like, it doesn't always serve me well, but in this case, it has served me very well. I have never once doubted that God is real, that Jesus came and died for our sins, that now I am a child of God because of his sacrifice, and I have heaven to look forward to. And I think that as I've seen God move in my life, I've only become more certain of those facts. Now, that doesn't mean I was always a perfect Christian and I had the perfect upbringing. I mean, there's definitely in the college years, I stopped going to church because I didn't have a car and all the excuses, right? I could have made it happen, of course. But, and then you're kind of just serving yourself instead of putting God first. I am thankful that I still was able, like, I never once doubted he was important. It was almost like this, again, childlike idea of like, oh, well, I'll just make sure that's a priority later. And I look back and I regret that. He should have been a priority the entire time. But, again, no one's perfect, as you mentioned. The only people that get into heaven are forgiven people. And so, it's one of those things where you learn and you do better. And he is a priority in my life today, thankfully. And I'm glad that a lot of people lose their faith in college. That was never the case. And that I don't feel like that was a risk because there was nothing that made me question my faith.
You spoke about the big experiences with your faith journey. Let's talk about everyday faith. I know you're a mom, you are a wife, you lead a team. I'm sure there are times when your patience is tested or when something just doesn't go how you want it to go. How do you show up? Because you have Jesus in you in those moments.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard sometimes when you are the center of all demands, right? And I would say even having my third child was something that has really increased that. I love Josie so much. She's amazing. She's 18 months and she needs me very much so sometimes. I also have a sweet, sensitive 4-year-old and she needs me sometimes. And I have an older daughter who also needs me. Then the team, then everything. And sometimes it's okay because I can stagger the needs so that I can be there for everyone. But when it all hits at once, that's where it can feel extremely overwhelming. And so you just have to let go of perfectionism. And I am a perfectionist, so I do like to do things well. And I've learned over time that although that could be a good quality for, good work product and showing up and trying your best, like those things are important, always trying to measure yourself against perfection is a failing endeavor. And so I've learned over the years to be okay with saying, hey, I'm just going to do the best I can. And at the end of the day, that's all I could give. And if it's not enough, I'm sorry, that's all I could get. You just have to learn how that, again, thinking back to your faith, Jesus is the only perfect person. And that is why he was the only sacrifice that could repair, the relationship between man and God. So I can recognize that I will never be that perfect. I can never be perfect enough. And that's true in my faith. And that's true in my day-to-day life. And so I just have to just show up and do the best I can and just rely on God. Say a quick prayer. This is one of the things, like when you're really busy and you have so many demands, sometimes I can also feel guilty about my prayer life or the amount of time that I spent in the Bible or the amount of time I spent on the things that, again, I said were really important. Those are my priorities. But I also have to realize in the season of life that I'm in, I don't have time. Like, it's just a luxury that I just am always chasing after and I don't have enough of. So saying a quick prayer, it doesn't have to be a perfect prayer. It could be an on the go, I'm frustrated and I'm trying my best, but I need God. And in that moment, I'm going to say a quick little prayer and that's it. It's from the heart and it's genuine and that's enough, It's just kind of understanding where, as a human, I have my limitations and I will fail, but being able to forgive myself, and also relying on God, I think is how I get through it.
That is so encouraging. I think showing yourself some grace in those busy moments is exceptionally important, because you can't beat yourself up, because again, there are so many people that depend on you. So, you cannot go into that spiral of, I'm not good enough. So absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You said something really, really interesting. In this busy season, you may not get the time to spend with the Lord as you would hope, right? The amount of time that you want to spend with the Lord. Are there different things you do in the busy season to keep yourself grounded in faith?
Yeah, that is such a good question. It's something I always struggle with too, is like, am I doing enough? Again, going back to showing myself grace. I would love to sit down and read the Bible for an hour or two every morning. I just cannot do that. I would try. I tried it at nighttime and I fall asleep. I try it in the morning and I'm interrupted 15 times and I get like 2 paragraphs. So I've learned to just find the places I can put that in, but also still be doing the things I need to do. And a great way to do that is through podcasts, for example. So one of my favorite podcasts is called Relatable by Ali Beth Stuckey. And she talks about cultural and political and faith-based topics from a biblical point of view. And I just find that so edifying. I love her content because it is always teaching me something about God, connecting something that's happening to God. So I'll listen to that. Or I'll listen to the 10-minute Bible hour. And that's just like a 10-minute quick, punchy review of, I'm going through Matthew right now. And so it will be, okay, I'm not opening the Bible and I can't sit down and in quiet read it, but I can listen to it while I'm putting on makeup or changing a diaper or whatever it is that I'm doing in that moment. So I'm finding ways to layer God into my day-to-day life. If I'm driving and I'm at a stoplight, sometimes I'll say a quick prayer. It's just finding those little moments where you can just stack in time with God and always be thinking of Him and being aware of Him. Friendships that I have with other faith-based people like yourself, that's always really great too, because then, I'm, socializing and building community. And then we also end up sometimes talking about faith-based topics that are also really encouraging and helpful. Just finding, again, just living life with God. And when you live life with God, life is going to happen, but you always find a way to include Him and have Him there. I think that's important. And always just trying to do better, I guess, too, is another thing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. My time that I get, again, in this season of life is a top 15, 30 minutes, uninterrupted. I've tried to beat my youngest clock. He somehow manages to wake up earlier than me. Again, in the night, you're just so tired. You just like, okay, I read this 5 times. I still cannot comprehend this, even though I've read this book before. It's not like I haven't read that. It's not, I cannot comprehend. It's not processing. Might as well go to sleep at that point. So thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful, especially for the moms that might be struggling, are in that phase right now. It's incredible.
I have another little thing that has really been, it's something I used to beat myself up about and that I feel so much better about, is I usually will pray at the end of the day, because that's when I actually do have quiet. And that's when I do have time. But I'm so tired, like you're saying, because you're up in the middle of the night and then you have work and, then meals and all this kind of stuff. And so by the time you get to bedtime, it's as I'm falling asleep. But I was listening to an interview, and it was someone who wrote a book, and I wish I could remember what it's called, but it was about prayer. And it talked about how, if you fall asleep in the middle of your prayer, which I always would feel bad, like I haven't finished talking to God. Oh no, I fell asleep. But then they were saying, well, isn't that sleep a blessing? God is giving you the blessing of sleep. Like that's a good thing. You're falling asleep while talking to Him. Why is that bad? And it was, again, one of those moments where it's something that I had internally thought a lot about, And then all of a sudden I'm listening to something that is answering directly this concern I have, which was amazing. So again, another way that God's speaking to me, it's okay. Like, just spend the time with me. If you fall asleep and you can't finish your sentence, it's okay. You could get back to that tomorrow. But I just think that's another area where, as a busy mom, sometimes you don't have time, like falling asleep while you're praying used to be something I felt really guilty about. Now I feel it's a blessing. So maybe that helps someone else to hear the same thing.
Thank you for sharing that. And the funny thing is, God already knows what you're thinking, right?
I know.
He knows everything. So such an incredible visual to see, how God blesses us with sleep. He is with us in that moment. And he's saying, rest, because rest is equally important. As a working mother, has faith helped you make a tough decision or give you peace, either at work or at home, or any decision that you've made recently?
Yeah.
Or not recently?
I have a recent one. Actually, it's one that I've had to deal with multiple times now. And as a working mom, I think it's important for everyone to know I can't do it all by myself, right? I need help. I have a very supportive husband. I have a nanny who comes and helps watch the kids while I'm working. I could not work if I did not have that support system. And so one of the most stressful things is when you have to change nannies. They leave, they're moving out of state, whatever the case is. I've had to do this multiple times. So this happened recently within the last month, but it's something I've had to do multiple times. Picking out someone to watch your children is so scary because they are the most precious, I would say but people, they're the most precious thing in my life, I guess is how I would say it. And to turn over the reins to somebody you don't know is scary. And I wish I had family nearby to help. I don't. So we have to go the nanny route, and that's fine. Interviewing people and trying to pick someone out, it can cause anxiety. And again, I've kind of learned to do this purposefully. It is not something that comes naturally to me at all. And I think it's important to know that because I've listened to people before who talk about trusting in God and letting things go, and they make it sound so easy. It is not easy to do when it's a high stakes decision, right? And so I really learned to exercise that muscle to like I feel myself worrying about it. I feel the anxiety building. No, I am not going to worry about this. God loves my children even more than I do. He will provide the right person. And so I have to give this, story to you as a testament to just his goodness and his grace in moments like this. So I was like, I will be obedient. I will let go. I'm not going to worry about this because God will show up and he will provide. Well, thankfully he did, because I posted a nanny job and I interviewed people all week. And so that was on a Saturday. The following Saturday, my top candidate I loved the most came, interviewed, accepted an offer, and she started on Monday, which was my first day of not having any child support. And so it was really scary. It was a really busy week for me. We're doing performance reviews. I'm in HR. So there's like a lot of work and effort behind that cycle that happens in our company. And it was like the most busy week with all these extra meetings, and I had to show up and lead things. If I did not have child support, I would have been in trouble. So I was so thankful that he provided. I just had to trust in him. And it's not always going to work out that way. And I know that too. So I wasn't planning like, oh God, I know you're going to show up and Monday will be fine. I wasn't going to dictate how he solved the problem. I was just going to surrender to him and let him help me through it. And if she wasn't going to start on Monday, I was certain he would have helped me through a difficult week. And there would be grace that would be provided in another way that I wasn't expecting. So I think that would be one of the most recent stressful situations where I had to really practice that letting it go and trusting in him. And happily, I can report back that it was great. It worked out great.
Incredible how God shows up differently to each of us in the way we need him to, right? Every one of us is uniquely made, and he shows up uniquely different for each of us in the way we need him. I actually wanted to, again, double click on something you said. As a working mom, you rely on the help that your nanny gives you. And you have a very supportive husband who I've met. And most moms, I think, feel guilty about that decision. Did
Yeah.
you ever feel that? How did you surrender yourself?
Yes, of course. Mom guilt is a real thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you probably feel guilt. If you're a working mom, you definitely feel guilt too, in different ways. And in fact, even toggling back and forth between those two roles, you feel guilty. I'm spending quality time with my kids and my family. That's wonderful. And then I'm feeling guilty, like, oh, I should have done like 5 things at work and I didn't get that done yet. I'm gonna have to do that this weekend. Okay. And then equally, then I'm spending some extra time working, or I'm, just basic 9 to 5 working even. And I'm feeling guilty because I would like to spend time with my children. And I don't want to be that parent that's like, I don't know if you saw this movie growing up, but I definitely am an 80s, 90s child. And Hook was a movie I loved growing up. It's like the continuation of the Peter Pan story. And basically, not to give it away, but Peter Pan grows up and he's a horrible dad. He doesn't show up to things, right? And I like think about that and how like I don't want to be that absentee parent. It's just something that I'm always trying to balance. But I didn't really have a choice, I guess, getting into being a working mom. I had planned to be a stay-at-home mom, like my mom was, and a lot of my family was. And that was my goal. That's what I was going to do. But living in the San Francisco Bay Area is expensive. And most people, myself included, cannot afford to be a one-income family. So we both have full-time jobs, my husband and I. God's really blessed my career. And I do feel that he's called me to play this role of a working mom. So I'm figuring it out every day. And that guilt is something that, again, I just have to extend grace to myself that as long as I feel like I'm along God's will, that I'm doing what he has planned for me and I'm becoming the person he wants me to become, then I can take peace in the fact that it's okay. And it makes me think of the Proverbs woman who, work is a good thing. In the Bible, work is seen as good. And I think that's one of the ways that I kind of help myself feel better about the fact that I am going to juggle both of these roles. And then God provides the people to help. I do feel like this is something that is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, both of those roles and the juggling and everything required until he calls me in a different direction. And that will be okay too.
We're going to jump into our next segment. It's a Would You Rather segment. So this is something that you should not overthink. Answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, so would you rather spend a day serving alongside Ruth or learning from Esther?
Esther.
Why?
This is where I can answer quick. It's like verbalizing why. That's the tricky part. I think because she demonstrated such faith. Not that Ruth didn't, but I mean, that's the story that I guess really stands out to me of someone risking it all to stand up in faith for what she believes. And as I have grown up, I've found like that's important to me is to not, bump people over the head with the Bible, because that doesn't seem to work very well. But more of like just showing up and standing for what you believe in. And that is something that I think Esther really embodies well. And it would be really interesting to learn more from her on how she did that and how she thinks through those challenges and how her faith is strengthened as a result. So I think that would be who I would gravitate to.
Would you rather live in a time of biblical miracles or see modern day revival firsthand?
That's a hard one. Biblical miracles, because I told you ever since I was a kid, I was like, the Old Testament is so fantastical. And I think that's something that like people grow up with the Bible and it's kind of like, it's just, the Bible and that's what happens in the Bible. If you stop and think about it, like even something as well known as the Red Sea parting for the Israelites to cross the Red Sea. Can you imagine like a wall of water with sea animals, wet sand below you that has never seen the daylight before, and like how incredible that would be? The presence of God in the fire and the wind, like burning bush, like all those things. I just think that would be amazing to see those stories in real life. So to me, I want both of those things, but also I guess I would gravitate to the biblical miracles.
So interesting, because when you talk about the Old Testament God, people are usually afraid of the Old Testament God. Like, he brought down destruction on non-believers. But it's so interesting for you to talk about or being excited about the Old Testament miracles, which is amazing. Thank you for your perspective on that. It's refreshing. Okay, would you have dinner with Jesus on earth or spend an hour in heaven getting all your faith questions answered?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus on earth, because I really want to get all my answers in heaven, but I know I will someday. Jesus on earth is something that I would not get otherwise. So that's one thing. The other thing is going to heaven ahead of my time. I think that would be hard. And I know John did that, and Revelation is amazing. And I'm thankful for all that he told us about heaven there. But also I'm doing a Bible study right now on Revelation, and it's so crazy. Like, that to me is scarier than the Old Testament. Okay. Like, I actually saw this recently. A pastor in Texas was doing a sermon on angels, and everybody talks about, oh, I want to see angels. And you think of like Cupid or like these beautiful beings in like white robes. He's like, do you want to hear how they describe them in Revelation? It's like all the eyes everywhere, multiple wings, and the like wings covering their face. And like, they sound so scary. And in fact, that's why perhaps every time an angel shows up, their first words are like, do not fear, because it's like fear invoking. So like a little part of me is like, I don't know that I, as a human, can handle that. I will be ready for it when I, cross over to the other side, and that will be fine. But, I'll take Jesus. That to me seems like a safer bet.
And I think also, one of the things I always think about is when we go to heaven, I don't think we'll have any questions.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know that we'll care. I have some questions, I will say, but then by the time I get up there, it's not going to matter as much as what is going on up there. I don't know. I kind of think about that sometimes too. Although I do want to know why kids have to teeth. Like, why are there not little slits there where the teeth can come up and nobody has to like lose a night of sleep? I would like to know the answer to that question. I'm also in the middle of that right now, so if you can't tell.
I heard a wise woman say that it is the preparation. If you've ever gone to a dentist, it is the hardest doctor appointment for me, for my kids, for anyone. I think it's just the hardest. I think the teething is just the first step in preparing them for that, I think. I don't know.
An ongoing challenge. Yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly, yeah. Would you rather have a lifetime of family game nights or a lifetime of uninterrupted morning quiet time?
You know what? I think about this a lot, actually. When I am just like overwhelmed with the noise and the chaos and like what's happening, I think about how much I will miss that when it goes away. So as much as I would right now sometimes think that the mornings, quiet mornings would be lovely, it's because I don't have that. But when I do have that, I'm going to miss the, loud family moments. And I think that's like, as you get older, the people reminisce and talk about the things that matter to them. It's those like crazy family moments where everything's loud and chaotic. So I'm going to go with family game nights, because then I'll have less, regrets, and I'll have fond memories and all that. And I'll have plenty of quiet time later. So yeah, I don't know. I just signed up for more chaos. I don't know how I feel about that.
Always a gift to have noise in the house. Okay. Mm-hmm. Would you rather have the gift of prophecy or the gift of healing?
Healing. I kind of like not knowing what's coming ahead. Like I think humans are built to only deal with today. We're not really meant to worry about tomorrow. We don't need to worry about the past. The past is the past. Like, you're just meant to live in the here and now and today and worry about that. That's it. And, that's what the Bible tells us. And I really do think that we're kind of wired that way. In fact, with social media and expanding our view to all the problems in all the world, has actually been detrimental to our mental health. So there's something about like you're an exceptional person who can not only have the gift of prophecy, but then be able to not let that affect you, I guess, in a way. And that's incredible. And some people are meant for that, and that's awesome. I just know myself, and that's not me. But I would love the idea of being able to help heal people, especially with my background of like my dad's situation and seeing how important health is to people. You cannot be your best. You cannot be the best mom or family member you can be, and you cannot be the best worker you can be. You cannot enjoy life the way that you would like to if you're not healthy. And so to be able to help people feel better and give them that gift, I absolutely 100% would love to do that.
Awesome. We're going to jump into the next segment. This is about encouraging our listeners. What is the one piece of advice you would give someone struggling to find their purpose in faith?
Be patient. I was there. I think we all are, right? We're not born knowing our purpose on this earth. Most of us anyway. I mean, maybe there's a few, and I congratulate you. I was not that person though. And you know, I would hear like God gives us all gifts and we're meant to use them to glorify him. And I think, you know, as you read my intro, I always wondered what that was. It wasn't until kind of somewhat recently that I realized, oh, it's people and working with people and helping people. And like, that's why my job is HR. Oh, wow. And, you know, my family and supporting my family. And that's something I can be good at and feel good about. And so it started to crystallize in my mind, but I did not know that for the longest time. But I also don't know that you have to know like upfront and when you want to. It's okay to kind of learn more about yourself, learn more about God, and you will have that revealed to you in time. So I think the number one recommendation would just be patient and spend time with God and look at what you're good at and try to connect the dots. And he's going to help you do that, and you will find that out. But I think we do, especially as Christians, have a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves potentially around, you know, how can I serve the kingdom? And I want to do it the right way. And I want all the answers. And, you know, as much as that sounds great, you know, God also gives us the gift of patience. And if you're not born with patience like me, he's going to work on that and make sure that you actually learn how to have that skill too. So yeah, patience.
Awesome. Okay. What's a Bible verse that has been your anchor in tough times?
Psalm 23. I know it's like classic and everybody loves it. It's fine. It's really cute. So the school that our daughters go to, they learn a lot of Bible verses in kindergarten. And I remember when my oldest came home and she had memorized the whole Psalm 23. And she was so proud of herself. And then I told her it was my favorite. And then she got me for Mother's Day, Psalm 23 on a coaster. And I have it with me at all times. And I just find so much comfort in it. And I know maybe if there's some other unique part of the Bible, it has something else. Like there's so many good parts of the Bible. I mean, the whole thing is good, right? By definition, God is good. It is all good. But this is the piece that just speaks to me the most. And whenever I'm feeling anxious or worried or overwhelmed, thinking of this verse will always bring me peace. And that's something that I appreciate. You know, I especially when I first was promoted into a board-facing role where I would go to the board of directors for my company and I do the comp committee there. I would get stressed. These are high-profile people you read about in the news that are now going to be listening to me talk, and like I'm supposed to convince them of things. Like, how is that going to work? And I remember like that Psalm 23, like before getting up and going to those meetings, I would say that if my children are sick and I'm really worried about what it can be, Psalm 23. If I, you know, any circumstance, it just always is consistently helpful. And so it has to be my favorite.
So for those that are listening, Psalm 23 is "The Lord is my shepherd." That's the psalm that Katie's talking about. So we're going to jump into our last segment today, and it is a rapid fire segment. So again, please do not overthink the first thing that comes to mind. What's your favorite Bible verse for encouragement?
Well, Psalm 23.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we just talked about it. So, okay, next.
What's one worship song that always lifts your spirit?
So I love the modern stuff, but I also love like the old stuff too. I just found out that there's this like all those old hymns that I grew up with, especially in the Catholic Church. There's a lot of hymns there. Carrie Underwood, that's right. She just came out with like kind of this Western, kind of more modern version of all of the hymns, and I absolutely love it. I think that probably out of those, How Great Thou Art is one that I'm so familiar with, and I love that one. I love Amazing Grace too. There's just so many good ones, and I'm really enjoying kind of bringing those back into my playlist through kind of a more modern musical avenue. But anyway, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Which woman in the Bible do you relate to most?
I mean, I would say maybe I like Esther a lot. I don't identify with how fancy she is, but I love her conviction of doing the right thing against all odds. And I think, especially in my role through the last 5 years and how crazy the world has gotten, it's been really important for me in HR to have a rudder and to stand up for what's right, not what's popular. And I think that's where that's why I would want to meet her. And we just talked about that. And it's funny that you would have put that as a choice, because I think that she is a great example of someone who was willing to risk it all to do the right thing. And I feel like in a much smaller scale, that is something that I feel called to do in my role as well.
If you could have dinner with one woman from the Bible, who would it be? It can't be Esther.
No. We're done talking about Esther. It would be Mary, because
Mary the mother?
I actually marry Jesus's mom. Yes, because as a mother of God, like fully man and fully God, I just have so many questions. Like, did he wake up in the middle of the night? Did he cry? Did he teeth? Like, what was that like? I have so many questions. I think it would be a very interesting dinner. And also I feel like she probably has some tips, and I would appreciate those too.
Okay. Fasting or deep study? Which draws you closer to God?
Deep study. I cannot do without food. It makes me hangry for sure. And so like, I like the idea of fasting, but like, I don't know that I can actually do it in a very God glorifying way. I think it'd just be kind of angry all the time. So I definitely think deep study would be the way that I would go.
You know, it's so interesting. When we talk about fasting, we often talk about food, but I cannot fast food either, because, you know, first of all, I'm a 100-pound woman and I will disappear if I start fasting. So I have learned how to fast from internet. I have learned how to fast from binge watching. I have learned how to fast from reading non-faith books. You know, so stuff like that. I think that has helped me a lot. Fasting, in my opinion at least, is whenever I have the urge to binge watch, I instead pick up the Bible, right? Or whenever I want to go onto YouTube and look at all the shorts, I instead pick up the Bible. So I think that's how, in my mind, I have framed fasting to be, because I cannot fast food. I am a very, very hangry person as well.
You and I both. Well, I love that. I love that perspective of how you can fast in other ways. And I definitely think like fasting technology is a huge one for me.
Yep.
But I do think like to focus on God, the deep study would probably still be my answer.
Awesome. Okay. Coffee or tea?
So coffee before 12 and then tea in the afternoon and evening. I have a very like strict line there. Yes, because the caffeine can affect sleep, and I am all about optimizing sleep these days, because you never know how much you're going to get, you know, especially with young kids. So, but a little unknown fact, I was a barista in college, and I had free coffee, which was great. And our shop would close at like midnight or 1 a.m. So I would take the evenings and I would have free coffee and study, and it was great. And I drank so much coffee. I just quit coffee after that experience for like a good 5 to 10 years. But coffee is back on the menu.
Awesome. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
I guess the one piece of advice or the one thing that I think is important to me that might be helpful for other people to think about as well is to always just be genuinely yourself and to show up every day with those values intact. And, I think just looking at my working life or, in the community or whatever your life looks like, I think that's something that's always served me really well, is to just be genuinely yourself. And it's not always going to be, speaking of tea, someone's cup of tea, but you will attract people and the community and the job and the coworkers and all the people that are complementary to you instead of you trying to appease others. So I think that's something that I would just leave people with is, just be genuinely yourself, put God first, and everything else kind of falls into place.
Wow, what an incredible conversation, Katie. Thank you so much for sharing your story and wisdom with us today. I know our listeners are going to be so encouraged by this. Until next time, keep walking in faith and living with joy.
Thank you for having me.